What's going on today, guys? So another race season is upon us. It's the very beginning of February, and I've got quite a bit of work to do. So I've got three race cars right now. First, I've got this 2008 Nismo 350Z that was turned into a race car. It's a Spec Z race car. Next, I've got my ST4 350Z. So this is the one that I mainly race. I've never raced this one yet. This is going to be the first time I take it out. So I've got to do a lot of maintenance on this car just to kind of make sure that it's safe to go on track because I've never been in it. So I've got to go through the brakes. I've got to go through, I'm going to change the oil, change all the fluids, all that kind of stuff, just make sure everything seems like it's good. I know that it should be a good car. I know the previous owner, but I still need to go through it. They were mentioning that one of the calipers might be leaking, so I'm going to have to take care of that. This car, the last time it was on track, blew something in the power steering. I don't know if it's a pump. I don't know if it's going to be a rack. I don't know if it's just a hose. I'm really hoping it's a hose because last year I went through the rack and the pump and all the hoses. So hopefully it's just a hose somewhere. It ended up spraying power steering fluid all over the car. Look at this, man. Like I was on the track, I knew something was going on because I started getting power steering fluid all over the windshield. Looks like I wiped it off, but it's got a lot of power steering residue all over the car. It just starts coming out these vents and things like that, and it's all over the roof of the car, everywhere. So I noticed that that was happening. I got really lucky. The power steering went out right before track exit, so I was able to just come right off track. Power steering goes out. These things are impossible to drive around the track without power steering. Like it's impossible. So you just have to get off track as soon as possible. I got really lucky that it was so close to the track exit. But so I've got to figure that out. I've got to go through the brakes on this car. I've got to change all the fluids and everything on this car as well. And then of course I've got the 430 Challenge GT3 car. It didn't end up selling yet, so I'm probably going to take it out to the racetrack. I was able to get a garage out at the track, and so I'm going to be able to leave one or two of the cars out at the track if I want. So I'm going to try to take this one out, drive it around. I think having some good driving videos of a car always helps it sell. I just think maybe everybody is not quite sure that this car can go around the track, but I know it can. This is a super fun, cool car. I think springtime, now that spring's rolling around, this car will probably end up selling pretty quickly. Super rare. I mean, you're just not going to find one of these anywhere, and they're very, very fast. And for how fast they are, they're very easy to drive. If you haven't already, don't forget to click subscribe below. I appreciate you guys following me. Got this car up on the lift. I'm just going to go ahead and take all the wheels off. I like to take all the wheels off all the way around when I get it on the lift. Just makes it really easy to get underneath the car when it goes up. And anything that's under there, like the brakes and things, I can inspect, make sure none of my rotors are cracking. I've got to double check all my wheel bearings, things like that. So that's kind of the first direction I'm going to go on this car. I'm going to try and get this one completely track ready, and then I will go ahead and get to this one. I took some inner fenders out for my son's car, so I've got some inner fenders coming for this car and this car, just so that I can try to make sure that inside these wheel wells aren't getting completely destroyed. As you can see, if it's open like this, you can just kind of start tearing up a lot of different things, so it's kind of nice to have the inner fenders in here. Kind of crazy that they took an actual Nismo car and turned it into a race car. There's some pretty cool things about a Nismo car that the other ones didn't get. I believe they're seam welded, so they're going to be a little bit more rigid and stiff, things like that. The bushings are a little bit different. There's quite a few different things about a Nismo car versus just a normal DE car. And like I said, it's kind of strange that they did that to a Nismo, but it is an HR, and this car is quite quick. So this car was built by Life. They did the cage. The car also has a really nice carbon Kevlar Race Tech seat that has the air that blows in through the bottom, and I've got the cool suit and all that stuff, so I've got to get a splitter to be able to have the air go into the seat and my helmet. I'm actually going to take this seat out and put it in that car, because this seat, the way that they built this cage, they didn't give it some more space for taller guys. So this seat is all the way up against the back here. I'm going to be able to adjust this seat in that car better, and that seat in this car better. I'm hoping I'll be able to get pretty comfortable in this car. So far, with the way that they did this rear bar, it makes no sense. I might even have to cut this bar out and re-weld a new bar in that has a bend to it. I've got some tube. I'll just have to go to my buddy's place and use this tube bender and get that situated so I have a little bit more space to move the seat a little bit further back, because man, it's kind of cramped the way it is, but I'll do the best I can there. Because it's an HR car and it's going into a spec class, they had to add a ton of weight in this car. Just for its compliancy, because this car has more power than the DE motor, So it's all about balance over power to make the cars competitive. But this car has to weigh like 3,300 pounds. And when that car was a spec car, it had to weigh 3,100 pounds. So this car has to weigh 225 pounds more than a DE car would have as a spec car. But the cool thing is they went from a 275 tire in spec to 295. And the 295, when I was running in the spec in the DE car, almost seemed like too much tire. But because this car is a little bit more horsepower and heavier, I have a feeling that the 295 is actually going to perform better in this car and help with that lateral grip that you were losing because of the weight in this car. So I'm almost wondering if when they went to the 295 tire, this is the car to have for a spec class now, just because the 295 gives you a little bit more tire underneath it and the car weighs a little bit more than it used to. So I'm pretty excited. I've never driven an HR350Z, never driven an HR350Z on track. When I had to compete against them before, it was very, very competitive. It really just all comes down to driver because it's a spec class and that's what it's supposed to do. But I'm pretty interested to see what the 295s do on this car. Also, this car has an upgraded brake package that I never ran when I was in spec class, and it's legal, but I never had it. So this car has the Nismo brakes, and I believe they're actually like a Stop Tech. A little bit different caliper versus the Brembo that I used to have on this car. Let's go grab one of those. So check this out. This is the Stop Tech, and here is the Brembo right next to it. The Brembo, the pistons inside the Brembo are just a little bit smaller, and the overall caliper is a little bit smaller. I think you get a little bit more pad in the Nismo, and so when you get a little bit more pad, you get a little bit better stopping power. So I'm pretty interested to see how this car stops versus how the old spec cars that I used to race stop. It's all the way interesting. I mean, this car, I put that big brake kit on it, so these brakes are huge. You can see how much bigger these ones are. And they're also a floating hat rotor that I'm allowed to run in ST4 that I'm not allowed to run in spec class. So this car stops like a solid 100 feet earlier or later than this car does on the outer loop, which is a big, big deal. That's where a lot of the time that this car is about 3 seconds a lap faster, and a lot of that time has to do with, you know, the braking and the aero, and it's lighter and things. But this car is only 257 horsepower, and this car is 280 horsepower. Speaking of which, I also have to get that car dynoed and this car dynoed again. I felt like when they dynoed it the last time, it was showing more power than it really pushes. And if I get it dynoed again and it's lower power, that means I've had a lot more dynos showing lower power than higher power. And so if it does actually run the lower power, then I'll probably be able to utilize the hood vents again, or some other thing. I can lighten the car up a little bit more. I can do a couple other tweaks to it. One of the other cool things is this car is a Nismo. It's got that Nismo front bumper, and that front bumper is a little bit more aerodynamic. It's a little bit longer. I have a spare Nismo front bumper that I'm going to try to put on the ST4 car. If I can get it on there, then I am allowed to have this front splitter 4 inches out from the front of the bumper. And so the Nismo bumper's bigger, and I'm going to be able to have a bigger splitter because of that. And of course the front nose comes out, but the longer the splitter is underneath the car, the better like the downforce is on these 350s. They actually, when they built this splitter, it was about 2 inches longer than this, and I had to cut it to be compliant for my horsepower to weight ratio with the aerodynamics and all that stuff. If I'm able to get that extra length back, then it's going to help the aerodynamics in the front grip of this car, which means I can probably increase the grip on the rear of the car and things like that. So hopefully that translates into a little bit quicker lap times. Not 100% positive, but it's worth a shot. Nationals are coming this year, and I want to be competitive, so I'm going to try everything I can to figure that out. I'll try to do a couple more videos while I'm getting these cars prepped and stuff like that. And yeah, we'll have a little bit more 350Z action coming your way.